In the early hours of a weekday morning in Melbourne's southeast, a call came through to emergency services. The voice on the line belonged to a child. She was trying to explain what was happening inside her home, speaking quickly, struggling to stay calm, and asking for help to come as soon as possible. Adults were present in the house, but it was the child who made the call. Responders were dispatched to a quiet suburban street in Endeavour Hills, a place where neighbors were beginning their day as usual. Inside the home, something had already gone terribly wrong. When police and paramedics arrived, they were faced with a scene that would later be described in court as one of the most serious examples of family violence the state had seen. For one family, life had already been divided into before and after. What led to that moment, and what happened inside that house? Welcome back to Dark Case Storytime. We bring you new true crime documentaries every single week, so make sure you are subscribed and all notifications are turned on. And now let's get straight into today's video. Monique Lezac was a mother of two. She had twins, a boy and a girl. At the time of the events in this case, they were 10 years old. Monique was closely involved in their daily lives. Friends described her as organized, dedicated, and deeply focused on her children's well-being. She lived with her parents in Endeavour Hills in Melbourne's southeast. The household included multiple generations. It was a busy home, but one built around family support. Monique worked across several fields during her adult life. She trained and competed in bodybuilding. She also worked as a disability carer. Those who knew her said she was disciplined and routine-oriented. She set goals and worked methodically toward them. Outside of work and parenting, Monique had ambitions for the future. She had spoken to friends about plans to change direction professionally. She was also known to be private about relationship difficulties. When things were going well, she did not draw attention to them. When things became strained, she tended to manage them quietly. In the months before her life came to a close, those close to her noticed changes. She appeared more cautious, more guarded. She confided in a small number of friends rather than a wide circle. Her primary focus remained her children, ensuring they were safe, ensuring their routines were maintained, ensuring stability. People who knew Monique consistently described her as calm, measured, not someone who sought conflict. She was not known for dramatic behavior or sudden decisions. When she made choices, they were usually deliberate. That included decisions about her personal relationships. In the days leading up to what happened, Monique had begun taking steps toward separation, steps she believed were necessary. Steps she believed would allow her and her children to move forward. What followed would end her time on this earth. Sven Lindemann was in his early 50s at the time of the events. He was originally from Germany. He later settled in Australia. Lindemann worked in the fitness industry. He was heavily involved in bodybuilding. That interest became a central part of his identity. It also became the way he met Monique. Friends and professionals later described Lindemann as disciplined on the surface. He trained regularly. He paid close attention to his appearance. He spoke often about structure, control, and personal standards. Behind that presentation, court material would later describe a different pattern. Psychological assessments found Lindemann held rigid views about relationships. He believed partners should meet extremely high expectations. When those expectations were not met, he struggled to regulate his responses. He had previously been married. He left that marriage to pursue his relationship with Monique. At the time, this decision was framed as a fresh start. There was no public record of criminal violence in his past. To many people outside the relationship, Lindemann appeared functional, employed, social, motivated. However, people close to Monique would later describe a pattern of possessiveness, a need to know where she was, who she spoke to, how she spent her time. These behaviors were not always visible to others. They often took place privately, through messages, through comments, through expectations that were presented as concern. In the period leading up to the separation, Lindemann's behavior became more intense. He struggled with the idea of losing the relationship. He expressed a strong sense of grievance. He framed himself as wronged. This mindset would become central to how he later explained his actions. As the relationship progressed, Monique began to adjust her behavior. Friends noticed she became more careful with what she shared, more selective about who she spoke to. This shift did not happen all at once. It developed gradually. Lindemann monitored aspects of Monique's life: what she wore, where she went, who interacted with her, particularly men. These actions were often framed as concern or commitment. Over time, they narrowed her independence. Monique reportedly felt she had to manage his reactions. She avoided conflict where possible. She chose her words carefully. Friends later described her as walking on eggshells. Monique told people close to her that she wanted the relationship to end. She said she felt nervous returning home. She feared he might do something stupid. These statements were not made publicly, they were shared quietly, with people she trusted. Lindemann, meanwhile, learned that Monique had developed feelings for someone else. This discovery intensified his sense of grievance. He interpreted it as humiliation, as betrayal. Court material later showed that he externalized blame. Rather than accepting the relationship had ended, he focused on perceived provocation. Experts later identified this pattern as coercive control, a form of behavior that does not always involve physical force, but which can escalate rapidly, particularly around separation. In this case, separation was brief. The escalation window was short. What happened next unfolded within days. The morning of May 30th, 2023 began quietly. Monique was inside the family home in Endeavor Hills. Other members of the household were present. The routine of the day had not yet fully started. By this point, the relationship between Monique and Sven Lindemann had effectively ended. She had communicated that she wanted to separate. She had also shared concerns with friends about how he might react. Those concerns would later become part of the court record. In the early part of the morning, an argument took place inside the house. What followed unfolded quickly. According to court findings, Lindemann's behavior escalated in a short period of time. Raised voices were heard. Movement through the house was later established. Neighbors would later confirm hearing sounds of distress. Inside the home, Monique's time on this earth was ended. The court later described the event as determined rather than impulsive. This conclusion was based on Lindemann's actions before and after. After Monique's life came to a close, Lindemann did not immediately seek help. Instead, he moved through the house. He accessed his phone. He transferred a large sum of money between bank accounts. The court found this act required deliberate steps. It showed awareness. It showed planning. Emergency services were not contacted by him. That call came from somewhere else inside the house. By the time police and paramedics arrived, the situation had already passed its most critical point. Monique could not be helped. Her life had ended inside the home she shared with her family. Lindemann was later located inside the house with injuries of his own. He was taken to hospital under police guard. Evidence collection began immediately. What remained was to understand how a separation had escalated so quickly, and what had happened in the moments before help arrived. During the events inside the house, one of Monique's children acted. She moved toward her mother. She attempted to intervene. Court findings later acknowledged her actions as persistent and determined. At a critical moment, she used a phone to contact emergency services. The call was made while the situation was still unfolding. Recordings later played in court captured her trying to explain what was happening. She provided the address. She asked for help. She stayed on the line. Police later confirmed that this call was vital. It ensured responders were dispatched without delay. The child remained with her mother until help arrived. She followed instructions given by the operator. She continued to speak clearly despite the circumstances. In court, a judge later addressed her actions directly. She described them as brave. She stated that there was nothing more the child could have done. This acknowledgement was placed on the public record.
The judge praising the bravery of Ms. Lazak's daughter.
Hopefully, as she grows up, Lily will come to understand that there was nothing more she could have done to save her mother, who would have been so very proud of Lily's courage and determination.
The child sustained injuries while attempting to intervene. These were addressed medically. Her actions were later referenced during sentencing as a significant factor. Following the incident, the children were placed in the care of family. Support services were engaged. Long-term assistance was recommended. The court recognized that while Monique's life had ended, the impact of that morning would continue, particularly for those who had tried to stop it. The investigation began immediately after emergency services secured the home. The scene was examined. Digital records were preserved. Phone data became central to the investigation. Investigators reviewed call logs, messages, and banking activity. Particular attention was given to Lindemann's actions after Monique's life came to a close. The bank transfer made inside the house was documented. The timing was confirmed. The steps required to complete it were outlined in court. Psychological assessments were later ordered. These assessments focused on belief systems, emotional regulation, and responsibility. Experts found Lindemann continued to externalize blame. He described himself as provoked. He framed Monique's decision to end the relationship as the cause. Recorded calls made while he was in custody were also examined. In these calls, he repeated similar explanations. He spoke about betrayal. He spoke about loss. He did not accept full responsibility. Witness statements were gathered from friends and family. Several people confirmed Monique had expressed fear in the days before. These statements helped establish context. They showed the separation was not sudden. They also showed Monique had concerns about safety. There was no dispute about what had occurred. Lindemann entered a guilty plea. This removed the need for a trial. The focus shifted to sentencing. Lindemann was sentenced in the Supreme Court of Victoria. The judge described the offense as an extreme example of family violence. The presence of children in the home was considered an aggravating factor. So was the prolonged nature of the event. The court rejected claims of genuine remorse. It found Lindemann continued to blame Monique for his actions. However, the court did acknowledge his early guilty plea. That plea reduced the length of the sentence he would otherwise have faced. Lindemann was sentenced to 31 years in prison. A non-parole period of 25 years was imposed. This meant he would not be eligible for release until he was in his late 70s.
He can hide his face, but Sven Lindemann can't escape justice. The bodybuilder jailed for 31 years for the murder of girlfriend Monique Lazak at her Endeavour Hills home in May last year.
You stabbed her 17 times in the face, neck, chest, back, abdomen, wrist and hands.
The 52-year-old used 6 knives in a frenzied 3-minute attack, while Ms. Lazak's 10-year-old daughter begged him to stop.
Lily did not give up trying to defend her mother. She managed to kick you and wrestle the knife off you, discarding it onto the floor.
Lindemann had flown into a jealous rage after the mother of 2 tried to end their relationship.
This was not a momentary loss of self-control. You were clearly determined to kill Ms. Lazak.
In sentencing remarks, the judge addressed Monique's children directly. She acknowledged the bravery shown during the incident. She stated clearly that responsibility rested with Lindemann alone. The court also recognized the long-term impact on the family. Support services were recommended for the children. The sentencing marked the formal conclusion of the legal process, but it did not mark an end to the consequences.
Jacqueline Schwartz has always struggled to find the right words to describe her grief, and just when she thought this painful ordeal was over,
without sounding too dramatic, it's ruined our lives.
the man who murdered her treasured friend Monique Lezak is making a bid for freedom.
First I laughed. I cannot even understand how a human being can be wired like this.
Sven Lindemann was jailed for 31 years for the brutal frenzied attack as her 10-year-old daughter tried desperately to stop him. But he ended up blaming his victim, claiming she drove him to kill her because she was trying to leave the relationship. During sentencing, Justice Hollingworth called out Lindemann for his problematic attitude towards women and his sense of entitlement. Now he believes he deserves less time in jail. He's formally lodged his appeal, which will be heard as early as next year.
Because he is so narcissistic, it wouldn't surprise me that these are just actions to keep him in the spotlight.
With time already served, he'll be eligible for parole in 2048 at the age of 76. Now it's up to 3 appeal judges to decide if he should be released sooner than that.
We know that you're not remorseful. We know that you have no regrets. And that's fine. We'll see how it plays out for you.
Amber Johnston, 9 News.
For those left behind, life continued without Monique.